You know, a viewer recently commented just asking me to talk more about the the radar detector that you see here. And when I was researching it, I really didn't see a whole lot as far as information regarding it. I did read some forums and such, but not really much out there on YouTube. And when it's not detecting radar, it's kind of a handy little device because it shows me my my system voltage, and it shows that I'm at 14.4 volts at idle. So it kind of tells me the health of my charging and electrical system. Kind of a strong radar signal here. In Arizona, the only two radar bands that you see used in law enforcement are K and KA. But the K band is also used in like motion sensing doors and alarm systems and such. So you sometimes get some false alarms. There are more expensive units that are similar to mine that actually have GPS enabled, and so it's got a memory, and when it gets false positives or you get a false alarm, and if you hit the mute button, it will remember that location and not alert at that location. My Escort Passport 8500 is an obsolete model, and when I bought it, it was being phased out, so I really can't put a link or nothing on it because it's just not available anymore. I mean, you might be able to find it, but I actually found it marked down on Amazon a couple of years ago. Now, some would argue that if you have a radar detector, it's just so that you can get away with speeding and unsafe acts and such like that. But really, I mean, radar detectors are only outlawed in, I think, 2 or maybe 3 states. I know that in Arizona they're legal, and so for myself, I really don't consider myself to be a fast driver or fast rider. At least I certainly don't do it in places where it could be dangerous, where there's other people, other vehicles, obstacles on the road, or poor weather conditions. I just don't, and a lot of times I'll be under the speed. But the exceptions to that is, for example, in traffic on the freeway. I've kind of found that at least it feels safer to me to go just a little bit faster than the flow of traffic. And the reason for that is you don't want to be beside somebody, especially being a smaller vehicle like a motorcycle, because the driver may notice you and then he'll forget that you're there and then switch lanes into you. So I like to just kind of keep moving, so maybe they'll notice me and they'll see me go by. That doesn't mean that I'm blasting by them or going way faster, just slightly faster. That's as I was stating. I found this. This was a model that was being updated, and so this Passport 8500 or the X50, I'm not sure which, it's not available anymore because I've looked it up on Amazon, thinking about maybe getting another one for one of my other vehicles. But when I did do some research on it, I found that the Escort brand seemed to have fewer false alarms, and had greater sensitivity. This one, it's got its receiver for laser and multi-band radar on the front, and it's also got a laser receiver here on the back, so that if you know you're being shot with a laser from behind, it should pick it up. And I did test this, and I didn't have a speed laser, but like a TV remote control. It's infrared and it's not laser, but it has a frequency that's similar enough to set off the detector, and it does set off on the rear as far as the front, and the laser tone sounds different. How I mounted this, because these are actually designed for a car, and I don't know of any that's in the affordable range that is designed for a motorcycle, being waterproof and having something with a loud enough speaker that you could hear it at speed. At one point I had this mounted on my other motorcycle, and I had a spot between the headlights down in the fairing, and so I could pick up radar, but it couldn't see a laser, so I had it down here. But on this bike, this is kind of pretty much naked, so there's not really any place to put it. So at one point I did have it mounted on the handlebars, but here you can see I just replaced the hardware for the windshield. The stock hardware was a metric fine thread, and I just went to the hardware store, Ace Hardware actually, and got stainless hardware that's in a 1/4 thread. And so I put some RAM mounts on various places, and I got RAM balls here too, so there's worth for my phone. And so, I mean, these, you can find these on Amazon. Just, search RAM mount. Originally when I got it, I was just plugging it into the 12-volt socket, but these 12-volt sockets, it's kind of been my experience that they would vibrate out, because I think they were designed for a car. It doesn't vibrate as much. You don't have all the wind, so they kind of stay in. But on a motorcycle, the 12-volt power outlet just kind of was coming out as I was riding down the road pretty often. So I actually hardwired it, and Escort has this smart card. And you can see here it's got a remote control where I could mute it. It's also got a fairly bright light. And so I hardwired it to the accessory where I have my USB plug. And so when the key is on, it's powered, and it all runs through the same fuse, the same 5-amp fuse as everything else. On my previous bike, I did have an external speaker that plugs in right here. And so it was quite loud, but you really couldn't hear it at any kind of speed. So there is an option to plug a wire from here into my Senna, but really, I mean, I did that like one time, and I didn't really like having the wire connected to me. You can get a Bluetooth, and I did do that. I had a Bluetooth transmitter that I found on Amazon that was only like about $20, and it seemed to work fairly well. But then when I used it, I couldn't connect with my phone, or if I turned my camera on, I would lose it. So, being that getting fast alerts or hearing the radar detector wasn't as important as being able to communicate with my camera, or have comms with my phone, or comms with somebody that I'm riding with. So I kind of gave that up, and I just kind of rely on the visual. And you can see here, when you turn it on, the light will come on just briefly. All I did was I stuck some Velcro on the bottom of the radar detector, and then this flat piece of of ram mount, I stuck some opposing Velcro on that, and then of course I got, you know, inner tube rubber bands. And you want to have it at somewhat of an angle, so that it's straight with the road. But I tend to have it angled up so that I can at least see the display. So, you know, the optimum angle would be, you know, parallel with the ground, but, you know, so I have a little bit less sensitivity, but at least I can see the displays. So if you're not really a speeder, I mean, why would you want to have a radar detector on your vehicle? Well, the fact is, there are some municipalities, and some here in Arizona, which I'm not going to name any names, especially some of the smaller municipalities that depend on fines for their revenue. And you know, some of the fines can be pretty expensive. I've heard of $500 speeding tickets in Arizona, and it's just really just nonsense to have to do that. Now, do I always obey the speed limit? No, I don't. But where I don't speed is where there's other cars around, where there's residents, and places that are generally unsafe. Having come from a former law enforcement background, I can tell you that radar detectors won't completely eliminate the chance of getting stopped for speeding. Even if the radar detector is on, it just won't. I mean, it's not perfect, but so what I'll tell you is, if you do get stopped, for one thing, have your documentation ready. I mean, don't dig around for old insurance cards or old expired previous registrations or stuff like that. Have your stuff ready when the officer comes up to you. And second, don't lie. You know, every cop out there on the street has already heard all the stories, so when he comes up to you, he knows that you've been speeding. So if he asks you how fast you were going, if you really don't know, then state that. Just say that you don't know, because he already knows the answer. And lastly, you know, it takes a lot to become a police officer. I mean, it's an academy, lots of studying, lots of homework, physical and mental conditioning. It's a huge effort and sacrifice just to put on that badge. So have some respect, you know, and don't ever call an officer buddy or bro or dude. You can call him officer, even if he's a deputy sheriff. Officer is perfectly acceptable. And that's no guarantee that you won't get a ticket, but every little bit helps. I mean, F-16. The only thing I really can't have any detail on is the mounting solution. I mean, if you have a FJ09 and you have the V-Stream windshield, then this works pretty well for me. Like I say, I did have it on the handlebars at one point, but I like it up a little bit higher because I don't have to look down as far, and it's more of a heads up, and it's farther forward. And I think that at this point here, I can actually hear it because it has a little, tiny little speaker on top, and it kind of reflects off the windshield a little, and so I can actually hear it. And like I said, on my previous bike, I was able to install this totally stealth down inside the fairing, where you really couldn't see it except if you were like right in front, you know, from the motorcycle seated position. I could look down into the fairing, and I could actually see this. So before I go into the base, I'm going to take this off and put this in my saddlebags. And obviously, I don't think I could really cover absolutely everything there is to know regarding radar detectors. I did find some forums and some other information sources on the internet, and that's kind of why I went with the Escort brand. Passport is you know, like GMC and Chevy, they're the same. So you know, they got pretty good electronics. I wish that it had a metal case or something a little bit more durable, or waterproof would be nice, but you know, this is under $200, and something waterproof and more motorcycle specific would be much more expensive. So if it's raining, I'm not going to run it, and also if it's raining, I'm definitely not going to be speeding. I'm going to be going a lot slower, so there's not really the need for the radar detector. So I hope that answers some of your questions. But I mean, if I left anything out, or you want to see something else, just leave it in the comments, and I do read all of them, and I reply to most of them. So above all else, just stay safe out there. Thanks for watching. Very cool. Got to love the sound of jet noise.